Hello, everyone. We're back in the track, especially the APIs and platform and product strategy track. We will start with the CEO and co-founder of Airbyte, a company that really buzzing these days about helping developers and tech teams to move data from a place to another. The company is like really on a rocket ship, solving a huge problem we have been addressing over the last 10 years. We're really glad to have him to talk about the evolution of data movement. I'm really glad to have to host on this virtual stage Michel Tricot. So Michel, are you able to join? Hello,
I'm
Michel.
able to join. Hi, Mehdi. Thank you so much for having me there.
No, thank you for taking the time to being with us. So yeah, you have something about like data movement to explain to us, right?
Yes, exactly. And yeah, so basically, what we're going to be talking about is how you get data to move from point A to point B, which is every single company in the world has data silos, and the question is how do you make this data useful, and how do you make this data available to your teams? And just a little bit of background about me. So I'm Michel Tricot. As Mehdi said, I'm the co-founder and I am the CEO of Airbyte. Airbyte is an open source data integration platform. We released it back in October 2020, and 2021 has really been about the massive adoption of Airbyte across the data ecosystem, across different companies. Today we have about 30,000 deployments. We support out of the box about 180 different data connectors, moving data into most of the common warehouses, whether it's like Databricks, Snowflake, BigQuery, Redshift, and other. Oh, sorry, it seems like people cannot see the slides. That's weird. I see it on the screen. Okay. Okay, let me continue. And yeah, we have a pretty large community of about 8,000 people that are either users of Airbyte or builders of connectors, maintainers of connectors. And that's a little bit about Airbyte. It's really about you take data from any kind of place and you move it to another place. So when you look at the evolution of data movement, there's been a massive shift in post 2010. Before, it was really about integrating very large data sources, mostly databases, and very long process that was basically the realm of data engineers or engineers themselves. And it was this long process of extracting data, putting it into a staging place, transforming it, putting it into a warehouses, and loading it then into places where the data can be consumed by the rest of the company. The thing is, that was something that worked in the past because the amount of sources that you could have as a company was very low. Today, every kind of product, every kind of tool that you're using is a data source. So APIs are a data source, files are a data source, spreadsheets are a data source, and more people are actually looking to leverage that data. And the way we're seeing things transform today is gravitating around data warehouses, who have become almost like the interface for people to consume data. And everything now is done within the warehouse. And it's not just about loading the data into warehouse, doing analytics. It's also about extracting data away from the warehouse and sending it back to places where this data can have even more value once it's been processed. So databases, files, even APIs. So how do you get data from a warehouse back into Salesforce so that your sales team can make more informed decision? And the same for BI tool. So there are a few reasons why this industry of data movement has changed. Is first one, cloud compute has changed over the past 10 years. It is much cheaper. Storage costs almost nothing. So people can afford to just move massive amount of data and store massive amount of data. There is also an exponential growth of data. Like every single year is adding more and more data sources and more tools. So creating more and more silos. And this is what is really causing this shift is APIs are not just like a technical interface for a product. It is the product itself. It is both the product and it is also a data store, meaning that the more APIs you're consuming is a very good proxy to count like how many data silos you actually have. And having access to all these silos has become a key challenge for most companies. Like, how do you reconcile, how do you merge data from your NetSuite instance, from your Salesforce instance, from your Stripe instance, and how do you have like this global view of what your data look like, what your customer look like, what is the journey of your customer? And also the warehouses have enabled new people to consume data. So the way we access data has changed over these past few years. And this change in how we want to consume data has actually led to a new paradigm for the movement of data. It used to be about extract, load, extract, transform, and load, and we've moved toward more like an extract, load, and transform. So first, a little bit of a reminder of what ETL and ELT means. So extract is really the ability to connect to a data source, to connect to a data silo, and to extract the data from the system. The transformation is generally where you're going to have your business logic. Like, how do you want to interpret the data? How do you want to join the data? How do you want to filter the data? And the loading piece is more around getting this transformed data, so your business interpreted data, into a specific destination where people can actually make decision or just take action based on this data. The problem with ETL is that, first of all, in the current world, because of it is extremely inflexible. Every time you have an issue with your data, and that will happen all the time because of the transformation, most of the data needs to be re-extracted. It is also very hard to add new data, because now when you want to pull the data out of a system, you also need to figure out like what kind of transformation you want to apply to it. And there is a lot of friction for how you actually update a data pipeline, because you need to be familiar with how do you extract, how do you transform, and how do you load. And it also goes against what warehouses are enabling today, which is warehouses have made data consumable by more people. And ETL, because it's generally a very custom, very end-to-end system, is not, or is hard to approach by less technical people, meaning that the load of working with data is always put on the data teams and on technical teams. So that's one of the reasons why ETL is not working today. Now, when you're looking at extract, load, and transform, the idea here is really about, let's remove the friction from accessing data, and then let the people who really know what they're doing, who are domain experts, to do the transformation with the full set of data available. And for that, like, the extract is really just take the data, and load is just get the data into your warehouse. And that's all. And you try to stay as close as possible from the source data, so that people later on who wants to make an analysis, who wants to join this data with other data set, can actually have access to all of the data. So, and the fact that all the data is available at the destination level means that also your team is more agile. Means that you might have extract and loaded data for one specific analysis, but now the data is there. So if you want to do a second analysis, you can. Whereas with ETL, because the data has been transformed, then you have to re-import the data to do this new analytics. So development cycle, analysis cycle are much, much longer. In terms of autonomy, that's what I was saying, is the warehouses, and even if you start adding tools like dbt on top of it, they really allow you to allow data consumer to be less technical and much more at the business level for what they want to get out of the data. And also, it's more future proof. Like, it's very unlikely that you will have a bug at the extract and load level, but you will always have bug at the transformation level. And a bug at the transformation level when you are in an ETL model affects and forces you to re-import the whole data. Whereas in an ELT model, then it's just something that you do at the end, and it has less effect on all the different consumers of that data. And now the real problem that exists with data movement is, as I mentioned, APIs have become a data silos for a lot of companies. And there is an infinity of APIs. Thousands are being created every single years. And whether it's like new tools, whether it's new data sources, and because of that, it continues to get more and more fragmented. And what you need to actually have and think about when you're doing data movement is, how do you break down these silos? How do you enable people to have access to this data? So what we're doing is really about how can we leverage a community of users that can help on building and maintaining connector. And the maintenance is really the key piece about it, because it's easy to build, it's much harder to maintain because API keeps changing, data model keeps changing. So how do you make sure that as a single company with building your own connector, you don't have to always prioritize new project to get this connector to work with a new version of the API, and how do you actually crowdsource the maintenance of these data connectors? And this is how we're really addressing the long tail of APIs. We have like maintainer programs that allow our community, whether they are users, whether they are contributors, to actually own a specific APIs or share it with the rest of the community and have like this crowdsourced maintenance. One thing that we've seen with a lot of ETL or ELT services is that generally they limit themselves to 100, 150 out-of-the-box connector. And if for any reason you're using one of these long-tail APIs, you have to rebuild this system in-house. And this is where open source is helping. Now, as always with APIs, developer tooling is key to the success of any type of project that tries to cover the long tail. So how do you make sure that it becomes so simple to build and maintain APIs that in just a few hours, you can create a new connector and you can maintain it? And one thing that we've put a lot of effort on with Airbyte is the creation of what we call an Airbyte CDK that is built on top of a data movement protocol. And this CDK can take several shapes for very, very specific use cases of API, whether you're pulling data from an asynchronous API, synchronous API, very limited API, etc. And that's really what allows us to scale this number of connectors and allow data teams to be extremely efficient and to not spend time on the actual movement of data, but spend time on actually extracting value from this data. So in terms of how we're thinking about API, so first of all, it is going to continue to grow. Tools like Airbyte are going to continue to be used and needed by the market, just because the moment you start consuming a little bit of data and starting to get positive outcome from it, you become like you want to get more data. You want to bring more data sets into your analytics stack and data stack, and it's just like a massively growing market. It's a fragmented market, but as the moment data movement comes into the equation, all these silos can be broken, and now people can really focus on just building APIs and providing data, and the data movement layer is going to take care of making that data available across your company. So that is all for me. And you can obviously use Airbyte. It's available open source. We also have a cloud version of it. We have a very active Slack community in case you need any information about how to use Airbyte, any advice on how to build a data stack, how do you integrate Airbyte into your modern data stack, what could be the best warehouse for your particular company. And yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
Yeah, thank you, Michel. We'll take the question from the audience. There is a 20-second lag between us and what the community is saying. Just a first question for you: APIs, ETLs, connectors, whatever future, maybe FTPs, whatever. Like, how do you see this data movement? Is it like does one type of technology will rule them all in the future, or no? It's just about like managing all in the same time.
Yeah, that's a good question. So first of all, I don't think for API it's possible to have a unified platform. You can have a unified way to describe an API, but you cannot have a standard for what does it mean to build an API, because an API, as I mentioned, is both a data store, but it is also a programmatic version of your product. So the moment you have your product into an API, your API will be very custom to how you're thinking about your product. It is just the reality. It's not just like crude. It's not just I get access to a resource. It's I operate a product via an API, and because of that, you will have all the subtlety of building a product, but in your API. Now, when we're thinking about the data movement, one thing that we're really focusing on, especially with Airbyte, is how do you make data portable? How do you create this layer that allows like a very low level layer to move the data from point A to point B? Because the moment you have that and you have that layer, then you just need to build application on top of it to make like to add any kind of features around how do you move data efficiently, how do you move data in a privacy sensible way. So there is a unified piece on the movement of data, but for the API side, it's going to be much harder because there is a lot more business logic involved. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I think an answer. We have a question about like moving data. Can we use Airbyte for moving data outside the company?
Yes. So I would say today it is not the key focus of Airbyte, but what does it mean? At that point, it becomes like, what does it mean to build data, to move data outside of a company? Key focus for us has been around the centralization of data into data warehouses. But you can completely imagine that moving data outside of a company is the other company has an S3 bucket or has a public warehouse where you can write data. And at that point, you can use data to move. You can use Airbyte to move the data into this external system. The other type of moving data outside of company is what I was talking before, which is what we call reverse ETL, which is once you have centralized data into data warehouses, once you've done your analytics, extracted potential segment about users, how do you make these segments available into operational platform? Like if you want to flag customers for like into Salesforce, into HubSpot, so that your marketing and sales team can make better action. This is something you can do, and this is what I would also consider to be like moving data outside of your company.
Yeah. Okay. So, interesting aspect on the sharing data access. At some point, the barriers will fade. At some point, if of course security and authorization are covered. We have a question about with Airbyte. How many connectors do we have?
Yeah. So today there is about 180 data connectors connecting from any type of sources, whether they are like APIs, files, databases, spreadsheet, or anything, into data warehouses. Now it keeps expanding. Our goal by the end of the year is to be supporting 300 different data connectors, but it's a platform. So you can add your own custom connector. If you have your own internal API and you don't need to share that connector to the outside world, you can also build your own data extractor for your internal API and plug it into Airbyte. Today, it's something that you can only do within the open source product, but it is also something that will come to cloud in the next few quarters.
Is there a cloud offering for Airbyte?
There is very much one. We actually released it 2 months ago, and one thing today with Airbyte Cloud that we're doing, it's about getting people who cannot operate or who cannot manage Airbyte open source, but also it's about features that will serve like larger team or larger organization. Like open source is really about solving the data movement piece. Cloud is really about everything that is built on top of the data movement piece. And yeah, that's one piece that is pretty important about Airbyte Cloud, something we're working on today, is there is a lot of sensitivity around data movement. And today there is a lot of companies who cannot tolerate that data gets extracted outside of their own infrastructure. Typically, if you're moving data from your own internal like product database or finance database into a warehouse, one thing we will be doing with cloud is the ability to just run the data movement directly within your infrastructure while still controlling it from the cloud product. So it's really about becoming ubiquitous and accessing data in any geography, any infrastructure, and any data sources.
Is there any synchronization capabilities on Airbyte?
Not today. This is not something we've been focusing on for synchronization. And we really see that as, you have this pyramid of data needs. And today we're really focusing on the bottom part of the pyramid, which is companies who are building and modernizing their data stack, buying their warehouse. How do we make sure that they get the full value out of the warehouses? Now, as you go up, you go more into the operational use case. This is where the synchronization exists. And this is something we will be able to handle with reverse ETL capabilities.
We have a question about the open source project. Like, what license is the project is under?
Yep, good question. We have two separate parts to the project. One which is the piece about connectors. This is all MIT, and the other one which is more about the operation of the connector. And this one is Elastic license. And the goal for the Elastic license is to make sure that people can continue to use Airbyte for free within their company. It is not preventing any kind of adoption. It just prevents people from creating an Airbyte cloud service. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, for people not completely familiar, licenses are complex. But yes, as you said, the Elastic license enable end users to still be able to continue to use the product like a kind of permissively with like an MIT license, but just avoids you to rebuild hosted services like directly competitor for hosting it and reselling to others, right? Am I right,
Yeah,
Michel?
that is correct. And the reason why we want to do that is part of covering the long tail of data connectors. It's about what we call our maintainer program, which is how do we incentivize our community of users, our community of developers to actually build and also maintain data connectors. And one thing that we want to do is to provide a rev share of the connector on Airbyte Cloud to these maintainers. So for that, we need to make sure that revenue of usage of connectors goes to Airbyte so we can redistribute it to the community and continue to improve the product.
It's a really interesting model. Actually, are you familiar with Tidelift? They try to fund the maintainers of famous open source packages, but it seems Airbyte is doing it directly for connectors. It's a really interesting model, actually.
It is, and I think that's one piece that is really changing compared to like other open source projects who've tried to do data integration open source. Is what very often happens is people build, but they don't maintain. The thing is, the cost is not in the build, the cost is in the maintenance. So you need to make sure that you have the right incentive for your community. And yeah, I mean, that's typically the kind of platform we've been looking at to see how we can provide that rev share to our developers and maintainers.
Yeah, and if the maintainers is not about the cost, but also he has the envy, the focus, the knowledge, right? It's a lot more than just maintaining just a piece of code. He's focused and knows exactly what needs to be done. So
yeah,
focus is key.
Exactly.
What's next for Airbyte in the next 6 months?
In the next 6 months, very good question. So first one is continue to expand our catalog of connectors, continue to improve on the developer experience for building new connectors. And the other piece is we have like a grading system for our connectors in cloud. And today, a lot of the focus is put on making database connector available in GA. And Postgre is going to be the first one, like databases are a huge use case for replication into data warehouses, and want to make sure that we offer like the best in-class data replication there. So this is a huge effort from for the team. The other one is we also want to, because it's data sensitive, like you have to be good with regulation within different geography. We are also preparing like launching Airbyte in Europe. So that's the thing.
Yeah. Perfect, Michel. We reached the time we had together. Thank you very much for describing what's happening in this ETL, let's say, and globally the data movement pace and how it relates with APIs at some point, a different part of the stack and data flows. Thank you very much,
Wonderful.
Michel. Good luck for everything.
Thank you very much, Mehdi.